Welcome, everybody. First training of the year, official training. Want to say thank you guys for making it. And if you're watching this on the YouTube, subscribe. But in any event, what we're going to talk about today is field underwriting, kind of talking about specific health issues, what's out there, how to manage these, and also how to be better equipped to handle these in the process of getting everything set in the first place. So it really goes back to a lot of the conversations I have with people is ask the right questions, ask the right details. On a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. and Mrs. Client, one being 1 foot in the grave, 10 being you're ready to go out and run a marathon, where would you say your health is classified? That's a great way of finding out the details without, saying, yeah, what drugs are you on? Stuff like that. Because most people are going to say, I'm a 6. Well, why are you a 6? Well, I'm a little overweight. Well, you said it, not me. And I've got blood pressure medication. Okay, how much is the dosage? Whatever, and you can ask those questions to make a little bit more lighthearted because obviously it's a sensitive conversation about medicals. But funny story, when I was working with financial advisors, I actually had a financial advisor who had to ask his female client what happened with the last results of her pap smear. So as you can see, we have probably the one of the most intimate, jobs, if you will, asking questions both on the financial side as well as on the health side. Most financial advisors don't care or don't want to talk about your health. Most doctors don't care or want to talk about your financials. We're in the middle. So we have probably the most intimate conversations to ask people. So when we talk about certain health issues and we talk about underwriting, we want to set the appropriate expectations. We don't want to tell the client they're going to get some of the best rating possible and then realize that they're far from it. So, here we want to understand the underwriting process, how to just really look at the overall process, learn how to handle certain strategies for like health issues or high risk clients. And then we can review, which we'll look at on the portal, carrier specific underwriting guidelines and case studies. We'll dive in with that. Um, and kind of start out with understanding underwriting and the life insurance process in general. So when we think about life insurance, how it plays a pivotal role in policy approval, why is it important to ask the client to give us appropriate information? Now, I understand everybody here is out to make a sale, support their client. If they can slip one past the goalie with the carrier, let's be honest, some people will do that. But why is that a problem when you think about underwriting and you being a field underwriter for these clients? When you talk about evaluation of their health, lifestyle, and financial factors, can anyone think of a reason why this is so important?
You have to know what they qualify for.
That's you personally, correct? Let's say you have a bell cow carrier. We'll say carrier A is your go-to, right? Well, if you keep giving that go-to carrier all the bad business, you're going to have a problem here in mostly the adverse selection. So, what you don't realize is carriers rely on us as field underwriters to help them get the right risk. Now, yes, we want to put all the money with all the carriers we love, but not every carrier is going to be the one that loves your client. And the problem with that is that as you give them all sorts of business, everyone else is giving them all sorts of business. Well, on the back end, there's a large tail, and the tail is adverse selection. So someone comes in and has an unexpected early mortality. That could shift the books, the financial books of the carrier to the extent that they have to change their products completely. So the favorite product you have might no longer be available because of prior risk. Good example, Corbridge used to have very good diabetic underwriting, but there was a certain genre or class that had a lot of undiagnosed diabetics that swayed and tipped them to no longer provide favorable diabetic risk classes. And so they have a sanctity to their underwriting and their process that, diabetes is hit harder than some of the other classes. There are other people who are very favorable in foreign national spaces, whereas other carriers will not touch it. So, based on prior policies that have been put in force, a tail on what's been submitted and taken, and you could say that National Life Group is a strong carrier right now, but could they be a strong carrier in the future, depending on the risks that they took during COVID? They took a lot of people non-med. They had a different approach, which we'll find out is a great approach or not. But you're going to find that carriers often go to the top for a few years, then they trickle, and others move up. It's a sliding scale. So when we talk in the underwriting perspective, why it's so important to have several carriers at your fingertips as well. So, when we look at health issues in high risk clients, these are the major conditions that you're probably going to come across when you talk to your customers. Diabetes, heart disease, and cancer are usually your top three when you talk to people. Anxiety could play a role in there too. My wife used to be an underwriter, and she said that she came home one time and she goes, Phil, I've looked at so many cases, and people are either on blood pressure meds, cholesterol meds, or anxiety meds, or a combination of the three. Like everybody. So, when you talk with clients, it's okay. You can still get best risk class if you're on controlled cholesterol medication. You can get best risk class if you're on, blood pressure meds, as long as it's controlled. Same thing with anxiety. So things like that, diabetes, you're not going to get best risk class. Just throwing that out there right now. But you will find that there are certain risks that people can admit to, because if you don't admit to it and then they find out, they're going to ding you for it. And so it's always good to be upfront with medications, understanding the situation, and let the carrier assess the way they're supposed to assess. Um, and that really goes to, I jumped the gun, I didn't even see it. Provide the accurate medical records. So if you're dealing with a client who is in their 70s, for example's sake, they're trying to buy coverage, and the client themselves not only have a primary care physician, but maybe the client also has a cardiologist. Maybe they also have, another specialist. So as you're talking to the client, the idea of being proactive when you talk about doctors, when they ask about doctors, I often phrase it as, okay, do you have a primary care physician or any other specialty doctor that would be important for this conversation? Don't care about dentists. We don't care about your pediatrician you had when you were 10, but we care about prominent doctors. So if you had a form of skin cancer like melanoma, who is the doctor who took care of that? Because that would be attending physician statements or doctor's records that are important. Now, why is there a problem with the people who say, well, I'm not going to disclose that and I'll let the carrier find it? Well, if you don't disclose it and the carrier orders a doctor's records to a primary care physician, and the last line in there says recommended to see a cardiologist, they're going to go back to you as the financial professional to go to your client and say, we need the name, address, and phone number and the date you last saw this cardiologist, and then they're going to order the records. So it's better to be proactive up front, give them the information up front, if they have those specialty doctors. But then on the back end, our job is to find the carriers who are going to play favorably with those type of clientele. So, and we'll dive into where you can see stuff like that. The big thing though is when you're talking to these clients, you're going to come over some objections. We'll take diabetes as an example. People are going to say, well, I deserve the best risk class because I want to pay the least amount of money. Well, it doesn't work that way. And if someone that you're competing against shows them a cheaper price, like you showed them standard to set expectations, and someone shows them preferred plus, are they going to go with that agent? Well, you're probably going to end up in the same spot anyway, but they got the app in. So here's what you have to do. You have to advise them in advance and say, hey, this is where I anticipate you're going to be. Carriers will show you different prices for better risk class, but more than likely, because of diabetes, you're going to be down here. So you have to educate people on what options they really have available and really dive in deeper on the benefits that they're going to get for that. So once again, in the absence of value is cost. In worst case, I never want to go to the alternative policies like graded benefits or guaranteed issue. But if someone needs a burial policy, we do have those available. So when we talk about carrier-specific underwriting guidelines, I always like to say that underwriting is like an art and not a science. If it was a science, every single product from every single carrier would be the same. There's no value or benefit to it. So if you're talking to a client and you want to kind of impress them, Mr. and Mrs. Client, my name is Philip Resch, and I am a broker for insurance carriers. What does that mean? I am not specifically employed by an insurance company like, say, a New York Life agent or Northwestern Mutual. I actually represent 40 plus carriers in the industry. And what we like to say is underwriting is like an art and not a science. And so you have 40 different artists at your fingertips. My job is to pair the right artists for you to see what makes sense for you to hang up on your mantle over your fireplace. So the idea is just to give them an idea that there's differences out there, but you handle all of those differences and you can support them in any way, shape, or form. So when you think about that, you have to match the right carrier with the right client, or right client with the right carrier. So when you think about some case studies here, we talk about overcoming underwriting challenges. Client has controlled diabetes, facing high premiums. So what can we do? We have the ability to pull back all of those medicals and all those that offer they got from, say, your bell cow carrier that you want to submit the business to, and then we can shop all the other carriers what we call informally. So what we do is we send all the information out, and I'll show you the vehicle to do so. And then what will happen is they'll come back and they'll say, "Hey, this carrier that you offered is standard. All the other carriers are offering substandard. You might as well take this, Mr. Client, because this is going to be the best that you can get because we shopped all the other carriers for you." Same thing with heart history. We have forms that you can fill out or have the client fill out before they even submit an application so we can narrow down the focus on what carriers to really focus on. And so what I'll do here is I will kind of break from the actual presentation and show you. So we have the back office. So once again, we partner with 3Mark and they provide us the back office to run quotes, submit business, check on all your cases. So they do all the dirty work, which I am a big fan of. But if we go to the underwriting resources right here, and we go down to underwriting and impaired risk. So right here, you'll see you have several options. So the ones to focus on is carrier specific underwriting, underwriting questionnaires, and then we're going to look at X-ray as well, and then we're going to touch on the Intel section here too. So if we first look at the carrier-specific underwriting guidelines and resources, if you have a specific carrier that you've run illustrations for, you like what you see, and then the client comes back and says, "Oh, by the way, I have X. Oh crap, now I have to check their guidelines to see how that would be favorable or not." So I'll use Corebridge because I know that the best. And this is their field underwriting guide. So if someone comes to you and says, "Well, Phil, I want to understand what I would get if I have, a certain parameter. Let's say we look here at blood pressure. So I went to the local grocery store. I got three readings and I was 140 over, 85. Perfect. You actually qualify for preferred non-tobacco if you're under the age of 45. You're 45 to 69, you have a higher lower number, and then over 70, you have 155 over 90. So this is where the client would fit in. They would also look at BMI. So BMI helps what you would say heavier people to get better ratings. So, for example's sake, if I wanted to go to do a BMI calculator, I can go calculate, BMI here, and we'll just say 6'1". We'll pretend 250 pounds. BMI is 33. So, I, if I was that, would not qualify for that, but I would qualify for standard or standard plus for term insurance. So, by understanding what your client has, will dictate how you would be able to go to market with them and show them that it's in the numbers. Like you can't fake numbers. If it's in the numbers, you can't change it. The biggest one I've always had an issue with was cholesterol HDL ratio. So someone has a 5.4, or excuse me, a 5.6, then guess what? You're not preferred, you're a standard. Unless you can go get three separate tests on three separate days that give you less than 5.5 and they would average them all out, then you have a chance to contest with the underwriter, but they won't just give you that exception because you're 1 point higher than what the preferred would be. The other thing is that again, we underwrite financially as well. So when we look at the tables here, I'll keep going down because there's a lot of stuff here. We'll get back to this in a sec. We talk about personal insurance. So I've had and this is kind of personal versus business too. So if you have a person who is a solo entrepreneur, they run their own company, they might say to themselves, "Well, you know what? I need to write a key person on myself." And they say, "Okay, I'm going to write a key person on myself." Well, the multiple for a key person on yourself is usually 10 times. But if you do it under personal insurance, it's 20 times your income. So a lot of times you'll want to find the amount of income replacement. So if you have someone who makes $50,000 and they're between 41 and 50, $50,000 times by 20 is the total amount of coverage you can get for personal insurance for income replacement alone. Now, if you add in something like a mortgage, you add in kids, you can increase that number, but you have to understand that if you're writing an application with your favorite carrier and your favorite carrier, you write that they make 10,000 a year because they don't want to show as much on government paper, saying they make a lot because they think that we're going to tax them, even though insurance, we hate taxes. But we need their honest number of how much they actually make so we can give them the amount of coverage they're looking for to get the amount of coverage that they want and put it in force. So this is all important. Now, some carriers with juveniles will go only up to 500K. So, for those of you who write 529 alternatives, you have clients who want to put big numbers in for their juveniles. There are carriers that will only go up to 500K because there is truly no financial loss for a parent. Yes, there's the emotional loss, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, having two kids too. So 500K should pay for a funeral, should also give you hopefully enough time to grieve, right, and get back on your feet. But there are people who will try and do 1 million, 2 million, 5 million on juveniles because the cost of insurance is cheaper, but you actually cause an adverse risk when you do something like that for the child because now they're at risk for an unexpected mortality. We'll put it that way. So usually, unless the client is worth, say, 7, 10 million or higher, you won't be able to get $1 million at least with Corebridge, but you can get $1 million with National Life Group, I believe F&G as well, for juveniles, but the parent has to have at least double the coverage. So once again, just kind of throwing it out there, juvies on this situation, Corebridge will go up to 500K, but understand that there are other carriers that can go higher with less limitations because again, not everything will fit into one box. Also understanding things like convictions. So white collar crimes, usually misdemeanors or felonies, certain felonies, as long as it's not grand theft auto, larceny, assault, involuntary manslaughter, or multiple felonies, intent to sell. Those are usually going to hit you harder. White collar crimes would be, like tax evasion, things like that, where there wasn't, murder involved, stuff like that. So, all of this matters. Credit matters because people, if they can't pay their bills, how are they going to pay their life insurance? So some carriers will run your credit checks and things like that too. So all of this matters from being a financial or a field underwriter as you're planning to approach this for your client. So again, you can see all the underwriting guides for the different carriers here. Here would be for your high risk clientele, underwriting questionnaires. Okay. So, picked on it a few times, so I'll pick on it again. Talk about diabetes. So, diabetes questionnaire. If you actually scroll down to the last page, here is all the questions you need to ask your client. So, it is good to know height and weight as well. It is good to know date of birth because some carriers will give you age last, some will give you age nearest, any other ailments or issues, but the client name is actually irrelevant. It would only be relevant for us to identify the client. Existing insurance, irrelevant. But here's all your questions. Date of diagnosis, that's very important. When is your last visit? How is the diabetes controlled? Diet, oral medication, or insulin? Most recent blood sugar reading. More importantly, what is your A1C? That is probably one of the best indicators. So, data diagnosis, A1C, and how is it being controlled are usually the three that will help you find a better conversation. Are there any other issues? Client medications. So, what other medications are they taking? Dosage and reason. You could take a blood pressure medication or anxiety medication that you have is meant for anxiety but is diagnosed for depression. Two different things. So, you have to make sure you label the reason why they're taking the medication as well. So let's say you fill out one of these forms, and also just a big one too is cancer. Cancer, 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 cancer. There are several types of cancer. So when you say to someone, or someone says to you, "Well, yeah, I had cancer 5 years ago, but I'm okay now." What type of cancer? What grade? All cancers are not treated equally. If you have a stage one case of melanoma, skin cancer, that is treated very differently than colon cancer. So you have to understand that there are different questions asked here because they are very different. Okay, so that's probably the biggest one. So cancer, diabetes, and then what you would see for heart would usually be hypertension, hypertension questionnaire. So, and then there's several others. So you can see here all the good ones. But let's say, for example's sake, you have some information and you want to assess how the carriers would look at that client. So I would go to this X-ray tool right here, this pre-underwriting assessment tool, and I would start to enter in information. Okay. There's two phases to do this. One, you submit to your bell cow carrier, the one you want them to get the coverage with, comes back with a really bad offer. So now you have to go back and say, all right, well, what can I do differently? How can I check some other carriers? What can I do here? So that's one way. The other way is you do it right off the bat and you create a new case. So you name it, you date of birth it, okay? Uh, yeah, well, that was weird. Okay, male, term. Trick of the trade, carriers. If you want to see the most amount of carriers at your fingertips, no less than $1 million in term. Okay, if you're doing permanent, they want to see something. If they're going to shop multiple carriers, you want to do something higher than, let's say, 250,000 in permanent. State, whatever, doesn't matter. Next section. Now you start entering information in. So remember, the data that you put in, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if I put in bad data, I'm going to get bad responses, and then I'm going to show clients preferred plus when they might be standard. So chest exceeds waist, let's say sure, and then we're going to hit next section. How did that change the client portfolio? It dropped us from preferred best to preferred with most carriers. You're having pricing here. I wouldn't trust the pricing on this side though, just an FYI. Okay. If this is it, perfectly fine. We have an idea where our client's going to stand. Preferred non-tobacco. Has the client ever used tobacco products? Yes or no? Well, yes. Cigarettes, cigars. Let's just say they smoke cigars. Will they test negative for nicotine? Let's say no. You're going to see all these drop to smoker except for certain carriers. Currently smoke cigars. How many per year? Let's just say 12, so one a month. And let's see what happens. Okay, Prue, Hancock, they're giving you non-smoker, non-smoker, and then you'll have other carriers that are now preferred nicotine. Standard non-smoker, standard non-smoker. Lincoln should be on here too, which they're not. So once again, you can't always trust what's on the side here, but you will see a start of a separation depending on what parameters you enter in. Here's where it gets, I guess you'd say, a little bit more intense. Is let's kind of skip down to medical conditions. This is where things can get a little touchy. Okay, so say I do type 2 diabetes. Well, when was I diagnosed? Let's say January of 2019. Well, I can add additional information here, or it'll probably open up another section for diabetes. What's my last A1C? 6.8. Complications? No. Currently treated? Yes. Insulin units? Let's say 500. And then we hit next section. Now you're seeing some carriers are already giving some opinions, but now we have a foundational client built out. Height, weight, some nicotine, A1C, currently treated. Now you could stop here and take this, table three, table three, table three, table two, smoker, or you could go to messaging. There's a drop down. You check Karen Shields, who is our case manager, and you click done. Once you click done, it'll take all this and compile it, and then she will send it to all the carriers in formal boxes for you on your behalf. Once you get that back, 5 to 7 business days, you'll get an Excel sheet and you'll see a table, whatever, decline, and it'll look something like this. So all the requirements are filled in. There's some medical conditions, and we got standard non-tobacco with Hancock, table 2 with Banner, mutual 2, nationwide 4, another standard with Principal, North American, B, standard. Now it's our job after we get this information to take it and run it through the illustrations. So whether it's term or whether it's permanent, we would then go back to our quotes, and this is where you would want to do it in WinFlex. Whether it's term or perm, you would want to do it in WinFlex. Why? Because you have different risk classes for the carriers. So you have to specifically segment the different risk classes per carrier to get a multi-carrier illustration to see who's going to give you the best risk class, best pricing, so on and so forth. So I'll pause there for a second and want to see, does anyone have any questions about this?
Yeah, Phil, going back where you started going through the carrier diseases and stuff, where was that found?
Sure. If we go back here, underwriting resources, the third tab, 1, 2, 3, underwriting and impaired risk. So we have the underwriting questionnaires are right here. So the different things
Oh,
like
okay.
cancer. Yep. So 1, 2, and then 3 down here. Informals, we won't really touch on that right now. That would be, for your high end, big old cases, we would go and we would shop all the carriers in advance. We'd do the medicals in advance. That's usually if you have a 5 figure, high 5 figure target premium case, things like that. Or if we've already done the underwriting on the back end, we pull the records, we'll need this informal signature here. So authorization for release of information to get the info back to 3 Mark. So our big bold friend here, David Royce, he is the guy who has the relationships with the carriers. He will fight underwriters. I firmly believe he will physically fight them. Like he's a big dude and he can mess some people up. But you might get emails from him on your cases. He is not a case manager. So even though he emails you, send the emails back to Karen Shields or Sandra, depending on the size of the case. If you get confused on where to send that email, just talk to me. But David he sends out notifications, but he is not a case manager. He focuses on underwriting. And I'm just doing this. I'm saying this now because I get the emails of Karen, reach out to this person. They reached out to me, and I'm like, so I'm just trying to save everybody the heartache and the headache. But yeah, so just kind of going back here to X-ray. X-ray is a fantastic tool. So again, if you do it on the front end, like you want to get a general idea where your client's at, you can do that. If you want to submit the carrier you love, find out it's a bad offer, we can go and request the case manager to pull the records and shop the case. Not for everything, let's be honest, like let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story. Like if you can still sell it with the carrier you want, the value proposition is there. Don't spend another 3, 4 weeks trying to get another offer. It's just going to waste time. And let's be honest, if a client does get sick or dies in between, there's no offer. There's nothing. So you have to make sure that you have to do your due diligence to take care of the client too. Put something in force. So on this tab, again, tools and resources, very advantageous. I'm going to just check this box right here for Intel. Okay. Couple quick things. I will just touch on this right here, this strategic underwriting program. So, if you guys are unaware, in underwriting, you have your main carrier. So let's say I've already picked on them twice, Corbridge is your main carrier. They can take up to a certain amount on their paper. Okay. Then after that, they reach out to reinsurers. Okay. Reinsurers can help them bind more coverage. So you would get one policy that would say Corbridge, but it might be $20 million, but they might share the risk with RGA, for example's sake. So if you have a case, let's say $10 million, it's an important case for you, and you don't want to go to the specified carriers that partner with RGA, we can actually go straight to RGA instead of the carrier and get them approved up to $10 million, 500K to 10 million. And then your carrier of choice is right here. They have to approve it for permanent coverage only. They have to approve it. So when you see this, like if you're a fan of Columbus, if you're a fan of Symetra, you know, Prudential, there's some, extra dots there for Pru. They don't want anything under 3 mil. Nationwide, whatever. So this takes and we find this with Columbus with bigger cases. So I actually ran 20 million with them a couple years ago, and they only took 10. If this program was out, I could have said, hey, you have to take the other 10 because it's RGA who's really covering the risk. It's not Columbus. So things like that are on the table. But again, I'm not saying this is like what you need to do. I'm saying through us, this is an advantage that you have. But we'll dive into IntelliSheets. Now, IntelliSheets is a great way to find out all the information from the carriers on specific things. So if I check all carriers, you got all carriers here. Let's say I want to understand a few different things. For example's sake, accelerated underwriting. Maybe I want to understand people's aviation guidelines, blood pressure. Let's talk cholesterol, driving history, family history, all this stuff. Mary Jane. Let's talk Mary Jane. So we've got all these different options. Now I'm going to hit open in Excel, and what'll happen is we'll pull this up. I'm going to shrink this a little bit so you get a little bit more perspective. Here's your accelerated underwriting. Banner for all their durations of term will do 20 to 60 up to 4 million with potential non-med. Drop ticket, they go through their process. So you can go down the list and see who has the highest non-med or automated underwriting. Hancock goes up to 5 mil. They have their context. Lincoln 2.5. Again, Mass Mutual 3. NLG, they go 3 million for term. They go up to 3 million for their Flex Life too. It says only a million here, but that has increased up to 3. So a little bit of difference or change here. All except term and survivorship. So term is 2 million, everything is 3 million. So you can see you have your non-meds, you have aviation, what type of, what are you looking for carriers who support aviation, blood pressure meds, cholesterol, driving history, family history. So you can see some of the carriers before you even submit to the carriers. So this is a great tool for you to have at your fingertips to have all these carriers and their niches, things like that are available. And it doesn't just have to be, the underwriting stuff. You have, product design, who takes loan carryovers, who's aged nearest, who's aged last. All of this stuff is here at your fingertips to help you be a better field underwriter. And so once again, underwriting resources, underwriting impaired risk, Intel, IntelliSheets, that's where that's at. Do you have clients who have HIV? We have 3 carriers that can also support HIV. As long as it's not full-blown AIDS, they will support HIV in a potential opportunity. Used to only be 1 carrier. Now we have 3. I believe, no, it was Hancock. I thought Lincoln did it too. Maybe Securian does it as well. But there's a few out there that will support HIV. Okay. If you deal in the foreign national space, we have a foreign national playbook that gives you a quick shortcut to like their underwriting guides. You also have carriers who you have resident aliens, you have carriers that deal with foreign national aliens. I hate to say that word, it sounds so stupid. And then you even have offshore products. So if you have someone who has really no ties to the United States, there's a potential still a Pan American. Um, they pay like crap, but hey, part of something is better than all or nothing. So it just depends on the type of client you're dealing with. But you can go through and look at the foreign national playbook to see if there's some advantages here for you with your type of clientele. So in essence, you have a lot at your fingertips. A lot of people don't realize that is available. And ultimately, all of this is to help you become a better field underwriter. As you become a better field underwriter, you can serve more clients, you have a better opportunity to close more cases. But most importantly, it's setting the right expectation. So when you think about it, the worst thing you can do is provide an offer or a tentative offer, and they come back here, and everything in between, the expectation and reality is frustration. So now your customer is mad because they didn't get the best this, and now you have to fight to save the case. Whereas if you give them the right expectations up front, it helps you in the long run. So, in closing, any questions? Nothing.
What
All
about
right.
somebody who has kidney disease?
Kidney
Does it
disease?
matter which stage it is? Like if it's a stage 1 or 2,
Hmm.
as opposed to, and they're not getting any treatments and they're not on dialysis, and then as opposed to somebody who might be on dialysis or getting other treatments that aren't quite dialysis.
So you talk like kidney function tests?
Yeah, like for an example, I just found out last week that I have stage 2 kidney disease, and
Okay.
my dad, I just found out, has had kidney disease for the last 10 years.
Okay.
And he also has bladder cancer right now. And then I have a very close friend of mine who I just found out he too has stage 2 kidney disease, but unlike me, his requires treatment, but it's not dialysis. And
Hmm.
he had to have like 6 treatments for 6 weeks, and then now he's fine and his numbers are good and everything. So
Yep.
I was just looking at that, since we all three have different case scenarios for kidney disease, how would that look with each case roughly?
Yep. So you would probably have a table rating or a decline. Your father would be a decline because he has cancer currently. Unfortunately, not trying to be a jerk about it, but the big things that you would say if you don't want to use like these big forms is, as you'll see with all of them, date of diagnosis, what's the issue, stage, which and how is it being treated. Okay. Any flare-ups, any other issues, and then we can take it to, the carriers. So for example's sake, if you have this ailment or issue, we would say, hey, Karen, I want to shop a client who's, 29, has kidney disease diagnosed at this point. They're doing this to remedy the situation, whether it's, flushing the kidneys on a weekly basis or something like that. And they're looking for $1 million in 20-year term, whatever it may be. So you don't have to give a name or a date of birth. You can give an age, and you can be anonymous from that standpoint. But the other thing is when you do the X-ray piece or have that go through the process for them to shop it, let's say you get an offer that you like. Well, all of those are separate offers that were tentatively provided. So let's say myself, Angel, and Raphael were all underwriters for the same company. I give the tentative underwriting offer based on my opinion, but you guys might have a stricter opinion than I do. So when you do a tentative through X-ray and you get a tentative offer back, when you submit the application, you would ask Karen to give you that one tentative offer from the carrier to PDF it and submit it with the case. So it goes back to Phil Resch, who had his first eyes on it versus the other two underwriters.
Okay.
So that's the second step of when you actually submit a case after you have a tentative offer, you want to make sure that you put it back in their face and they have to justify. So if someone gave, it's like if I said someone is a standard and then all of a sudden I come back and say table D, say, hey, we gave you this, you already said standard, and what happened here? They have to justify what other things so you can justify to your client why it changed so dramatically. So, but yeah, the if it doesn't fit within the parameters of these types of questions, you'll always find date of diagnosis, ailment or issue, how is it resolved, if it's resolved, and what is the process of resolution, and are there any flare-ups or any other issues to go along with it. I had an agent who put one in for diabetes, got an offer back for preferred, and didn't disclose they also had a heart issue.
Oh,
So the actual offer came back as a decline, and they said, "Well, we want to take that preferred that you gave us." And said, "No, it doesn't work that way. Those are tentative. We have to have the underwriter fully see it." And that's what changed the whole thing.
okay. Thank you.
So, yeah, no problem. And, I know Michael's on too. So if you want to run through stuff with Michael too and just kind of
Oh,
get all that,
mm.
I know
Like I
he's
myself,
in.
I don't have any symptoms or anything, so I'm not on any treatments. I'm barely on the line, but
Mhm.
technically I was diagnosed, so I'm on it. But I have to go see a specialist every, couple months and have ultrasounds and blood tests and yada yada. And, and my friend, he doesn't have to do the um, weekly treatments anymore
Mhm.
because his red blood cells came, the number got way better.
So for your example, in your situation, you would on your application, you would write your primary and your specialist, kind of like we talked about before.
Right.
And they would want to know the results of the last test. So proactively, if you have a client who, doesn't give you this information or they give you the information, but that's it, now we have to go fetch the records and wait on them. But there are carrier portals now or health portals now that a client, if they want to be proactive, you can sit down with them and say, okay, can we download the last trip you had to that specialist, and then they can analyze it better. So if you wanted to take those records and have that, we would summarize it and send it off to the carriers once again anonymously, and they would come back with what they would say tentatively, depending on the situation. The more information you give them, the more solid the offer is. And that's why when we do situations, for example's sake, with high net worth clients, we order all of the stuff up front. We do the financials, we get a CPA authorized financials, we get the lab work done, and we order all the APSs because we want to get the cleanest offer possible so there are no surprises when we actually submit the full application. And so that's why I say when I talked about X-ray, it's garbage in, garbage out, because if I put in one thing, just because I want to know what that one thing will be, but there's five others, it's a moot point. So the more information, the better. And we can find tentative offers. Once again, if you're looking at term, quote no less than 1 million for the rating because that'll open up all the carriers. Some carriers like Hancock and Lincoln, the lowest they go is 250K. So if you're like, I only want 100,000, well, you're only gonna get like 5 carriers, so we'll give you a tentative. So we want to make sure that we can get the right numbers and the right people. So 1 million or higher for term, 250 or higher for perm, and that will get you enough carriers where you can make a better assessment for yourself or for your clients as well.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? All right. Well, I won't belabor the point. Appreciate the opportunity. Just as always, you'll see all of this uploaded on the YouTube channel afterwards. Next week, we have another training on Thursday. Wednesday night will be canceled because I have to go out to Memphis and I'm going to stay overnight. So there's no reason for me to do the Wednesday night from a hotel, partly because I don't want to. But the trainings are up on YouTube. This one will be up as well. Any questions at all? Text, email, call, carrier pigeon, whatever. If we don't talk, have a great weekend. And again, for those who want to make it out to Miami, 31st to the 1st, Small Business Owners Summit, and it will definitely change the trajectory of your career. Have a great day, guys. Appreciate you, and take care.